Say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Hasselblad webinar. This time we're going to be joined by Tom Oldham, who's a UK-based portrait photographer. I'm Mark Whitney, the Europe, Middle East and Africa events manager. And the basis of this webinar will be me chatting to Tom sort of quite informally, going through some of his work, some of his projects, and there'll be the opportunity for asking questions of Tom throughout the webinar. So please get your questions in and we'll try our best to ask them of Tom. So just a quick systems check before we get started, if that's okay. So today we've got both visual and audible components. For the best experience, we recommend that you join via desktop or tablet. You can join through a smartphone if that's working well for you, then that's great. If you do happen to get disconnected, you can reconnect via the same link that we sent you in the email. Or by using the webinar ID as it is there. Just also to let everyone know that the webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available on the Hasselblad YouTube channel within a few days of the webinar. So hopefully you can hear me, you should be able to, but if you can't, just make sure you've got your correct audio output selected on the control panel. And you should find that your microphone is muted, and that's as it should be. That's the default, so don't worry about that. But if you don't worry, we do want to hear from you. So if you'd like to ask us any questions, you should see a questions box panel in your control panel. Just type your question in there, that'll come through to us. As I say, we'll do our best to ask Tom the questions, time permitting. Just before we start, if you like this webinar and like the format of chatting to photographers, this time next week, we've got another one of a similar format, an interview with Sean Conboy, who's an architectural photographer. So same time next week, and you can register on the Hasselblad events page. So, good afternoon, Tom.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm good.
Hello,
okay?
Hello, everyone out there in internet land.
Yeah. So, how's things been for you? Last few weeks have been difficult.
It's been quite interesting, hasn't it? Quite a different kind of challenge. I think photographers are actually inherently quite well geared for this in lots of ways, in that we respond to change, and we're also quite used to I feel like we're quite used to sort of quiet spells that are sometimes enforced on us one way or the other. So I actually, you know, I don't want to say I've enjoyed it, because that's completely, I haven't enjoyed it, but hasn't been wildly out of the ordinary, I wouldn't say, in terms of personally in the house, just getting quietly on with being a photographer. You know, I've put some nice work out, and I've worked on my practice a bit, and bought some kit. You know, it's a bit like that. So I cannot wait to get on with life again. I really cannot wait to get on with life again. But you know, emotionally, it's been okay, I think.
Good. So just to introduce you a little bit then, so UK-based portrait photographer. Obviously, you're a very good friend of Hasselblad as a brand. And I would genuinely say that you're one of the nicest blokes I've ever met in the photographic industry.
I'm sorry, Mark, that's the case.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously a great photographer, but you're always willing to share your experiences, and you're full of interesting stories. So hopefully this webinar chat's going to be very good for our viewers. So you shoot many well-known faces, and you also do personal projects. So basically, we're going to go through Tom's work and look at some of his sort of showcase images, look at some of his projects, and find out a bit more about him. So let's start off by looking at some of your images then, Tom, and maybe you could just talk us through some of these and what they were for.
One of the grand privileges, I think, of being a portrait photographer is that we do find ourselves in rooms with kind of world-class talent, you know, and it was a really special moment to, you know, to set up for a shoot and have Mo Farah walk in, and that's a real bonus, you know, to find out what these people are really like in the flesh, you know. And this was a cover of a magazine called Runner's World, and they'd line up this opportunity with Mo Farah through Nike, and wanted to do something special. It was a commemoration issue, 20 years or 30 years or something of Runner's World, and they really wanted to do modern Mo and retro Mo. So they got all this kit sort of late 80s kit of Nike, including this like Walkman here, sports Walkman, and also put him in like a late 80s hip hop wig, which was just like an absolutely inspired idea from the creative director. And when he phoned me up and said that you know, do you want to go for this concept with Mo Farah? It's like, of course I do. And it was a real treat. He was really up for it. As you can see, he is totally engaged, and we just lit it beautifully, and it just sung from the cover of the magazine. It was an amazing experience, really good.
Okay, great. And this next one, he could be known to be a little bit difficult to work with, I think, if you're a member of the press, but what's it like as a photographer?
Well, it's Jose Mourinho then, so former coach at Barcelona and Chelsea and Manchester United, and he and now he's at Spurs, right? Is that right?
Yep.
He owns the room. He owns every room that he's in, and I'm not there to challenge that. You know, he's a good-looking person, and I am there to kind of honor that, really. And what was really interesting about this for us is I've shot him before in a really classic kind of black and white format, and that looked really, really good. But I wanted to just push my own aesthetic a bit, but kind of didn't really let anyone know. So we had got him, you know, he came into the room. We had set it all up and had it all ready, but he stood onto the X, very cool, X marks the spot. And then my assistants raised a plastic sheet behind him and made the set look a bit like a building site. But all that is a blue, I think, plastic sheet behind him, and we're shining a light through it, a gelled light through it, just to give it some texture and atmosphere. And what I didn't think he would want to see is that he was being photographed in front of a plastic sheet. So we waited till he was in position and he was looking towards me, and then raised it so that he didn't see it. So a bit of sleight of hand, just to get the atmosphere that we wanted for the shot, you know. But I'm really, really proud of this shot. I loved it. We exhibited this, didn't we, Mark, at the
recently,
print space? Yeah, I'm really proud of it, and it's shot on the 100 megapixel H6D, and it was a really big print at the exhibition that we had, and it, you know, people were really able to look closely, and it really held up. It looked amazing.
And so did he like the image after you'd taken it, if you surprised him with the plastic sheet? Or
he had a little flick through and he didn't reject anything. So I mean, there's a trust that's implicitly kind of already in place when, you know, if I'm raising my camera to photograph him, that's because everybody has already agreed that I'm not going to sell him down the river with a rubbish picture. So, you know, when he looked through it, he was quite surprised, but he's happy. You know, it did look good, and everyone sort of recognised that. So, you know, it was fine.
Great. Okay, let's move on. So Noel Gallagher, and we've actually had a question about black and white already from Cameron.
Oh, hello, Cameron.
So what goes into your choice in making a portrait, colour or black and white? And Cameron often finds himself leaning towards black and white because of his background in film. Is that something you can relate to?
Yeah, it's really interesting that, because it's really clear. There's never, or very, very rarely, a scenario when we're shooting that we would go, do you know what? I think this would look good in black and white. It's always sort of predetermined that we will, when we're shooting, it will be a black and white shot. And this picture of this is Noel Gallagher from Oasis and High Flying Birds, and we always knew that this would be a black and white portrait. By the way it's lit, it's just minimal in tone. The black backdrop, the single key light and the little clip there, just all adds, just creating this form that just wouldn't work in color, I don't think. And it's about stripping away all that information and leaving you with the bare essentials. And it was a lovely reflective moment that he just kind of, we caught him in, really. And because he's not the sort of guy you could say, look reflective, will you, Noel? You know, he doesn't kind of play the game in that way. So you have to kind of catch your moments. And he, again, is another kind of icon that you raise your camera to and you look down through the lens there and just think, oh my God, that's Noel Gallagher staring back at me, you know. And it's a really, really lovely feeling that happily I never get bored of, you know. So I was really proud of this picture. Yeah, I got a print of it done and he signed it for me as well, which is really nice, because I'm still a fan some of the time, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, so I know that you don't like the word celebrity, but obviously you do shoot a lot of celebrities as part of your work.
Yeah.
So a question from John
Oh,
is, you know, how do you get access to these celebrities?
well, ever since I started in photography, and this to anybody who wants to go down this path, so I can't phone up Jarvis Cocker here and say, is it okay if I come down and take your picture? It's not the 1960s or 70s anymore, and we can't get access. There's a lot of channels you've got to go through before you can really do that. So I've always aligned myself with publications that can give me the access that I want. And that can be websites now as well, but really it's about who will give you the access to enable you to start garnering faces like these for your portfolio. And that's what you've got to work out really. So, you know, for my first instances of this was when I was a photographer in Plymouth I was working at the art college where I'd studied. I got a job there, and just used the local publications to say, can I have a press pass for this gig tonight? And I would supply them with a few pictures, and that really helped me get into the flow of how it works. And that would be photographing from the pit for the first 3 songs, and then you know I couldn't be a sort of music photographer forever in terms of live music, so then became attaching yourself to publications that use portraits, and then it trying to work for higher and higher profile magazines, I think, that can supply access. And then along with that comes brand work and advertising work, and your contacts, if you make a good job of what you're doing, you know that those contacts move and they take you with them. So it really escalates and climbs like that, but only through constantly kind of over delivering and doing everything right does it escalate. Not that I've done everything right, and I'm only saying that because of the mistakes I've
Yeah.
made along the way that you learn from.
Okay, but this next one is I believe someone that approached you.
Yeah, that's right. So occasionally I get things like this where this is a model, Callie, and she reached out and said, I really like your work. Do you want to collaborate on something? And this is just through Instagram. And I checked her out, and she's done quite a lot of high profile modeling work, and she just had a kind of aesthetic, and also as she had a great aesthetic, and she also came on the back of like as you can see, I photograph a lot of sort of middle-aged males, and through music or whatever it might be. And I really wanted to see how I could fill my portfolio with more females, and just to provide a bit of balance, and just to show that you can do it, and you can use light in a sensitive way to female subjects, I think, basically. And because you don't want to ever be excluded from work and job opportunities because you haven't got a representative image that's good enough in your portfolio. So I'm always trying, if you look at tomoldham.com, you'll see a really broad range of subjects there, from all kinds of celebrity world, sports, music, and non-famous people, and models and actors too. So try to keep
Yep.
that as rich and diverse as possible.
Okay. And this next one I always find interesting, obviously, to take the picture of the back of someone.
Yeah, Gilbert and George are icons where I live. So they are 2 people but 1 artist, and they invented East London as a kind of concept of an area where cheap warehousing enabled artists to come and work. And it was the call I had been waiting for so long. Thanks very much to Time Out New York, who Gilbert and George were exhibiting there, and they needed some pictures, and they just whisked me into their all around their house, into their studio, and I got on with them really well. And we're still kind of friends, actually, which is very rare for me. And I could see that they were quite up for the shot and wanted to push it a bit, which was great. And I thought there can't be very many people who are as recognizable as them from the back as Gilbert and George, and it just worked really well for them. I love the rim on George. He's on the right of his hat, where he normally wears a hat, and I just have such respect for them. And this got into the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize at the National Portrait Gallery, and it was used on the private view invite, and was a postcard in the National Portrait Gallery. And those are things that I absolutely love and I'm so proud of. And it was an incredible moment to get accepted into that. Really beautiful.
Okay. Do you have the sort of the ideas before you go to the shoot, or is it a case of seeing what the mood is
Um,
on the day? And
we don't tend to plan too much because you have the basic essentials, knowing what you're aiming for initially, but you keep that fairly loose, and you've got to use your sense to know when they've had enough, and but push it right up until that point, basically. So I never go past that because, like I said, they are friends now, and I don't think they would have been if I'd been a proper pain in the neck. So
yeah,
nothing's worth sort of upsetting people, I don't think.
no, certainly not. So you mentioned that you obviously have a bit of a following in music, and that's how you first got into photography. So when did you first sort of realize you wanted to be a photographer?
I don't know that I did actually first realize that. For my 21st birthday present, an ex-girlfriend of mine, a girlfriend at the time, ex-girlfriend now, suggested that I got a camera, and I think she liked the idea of going out with a photographer. And I just wanted a watch for my birthday actually, but she said a camera, and I was like, yeah, it's a great idea. And I kind of got into it. I did a night class at Shelley Park in Bournemouth, and that inspired me enough to put a portfolio together. And I applied and got into Plymouth College of Art and Design, and got a flavour for it. Just did a 2-year national diploma, and then just I had a really boring job prior to that, a boring full-time job in retail, and I could really easily see what the rest of my life looked like. And photography became this sort of ticket to a better life. I could see it and taste
Yeah,
it and smell it, and knew that this was my moment, that my opportunity. So I really seized it and rode it. My dad, bless him, I love him so much, but he was like, "What about all those free suits you get from Next for your uniform? You sure you want to give them up?"
mhm.
And I love you, Dad, but I don't miss those suits. I'll buy my own suits now.
Okay, cool. So we'll move on to obviously we've mentioned the current sort of virus lockdown and the
Yeah,
situation most of the world is in at the moment.
yeah,
So you've been keeping busy by doing a 2 meters project.
I have.
So tell
Yeah.
us a bit more about that.
Well, this lovely creative director contacted me, a friend of mine, Kathy Hutton, and this is all on my Instagram, but she said, "I've got to produce something. We've got to do something." And I was sat there frustrated and feeling pretty low about what the next few months obviously look like. And she said, "Why don't we just, get together and work out an idea?" And we thrashed our way to this, the 2 meters project, which involved us very, very safely exercising, and exercising with a camera, basically going out walking where people walked, and asked them if they wouldn't mind standing in. And like Jill here with her red bike, red trousers, red helmet, and red jacket, that's heaven for me, seeing something like this. So the line we used very much as a tool, as a mechanism to sort of sew the whole series together, and it was just so refreshing and cleansing to do it, and just to be documenting this time also, and create and just shooting the atmosphere a bit of our experience, I think is really important for all of us. I really hope everyone watching this has taken advantage of their skills to kind of do what they can to get it down. And this is Uche, this is our Tony. I mean, I know it might seem like the simplest thing in the world, but I absolutely love this portrait of this old guy who's a projectionist in East London, and just had such positivity. There's such positivity among all the people that we met, who were just finding their own way of getting through this. And even Mick here, he was such comedy to be around. It was absolutely brilliant. And we're lucky we've got photography, I think, at times like this, and it enabled us to go out and just find out that people were holding it down, dealing with it, and in a very English way, I suppose.
Yeah. So these people you just approached on the street and
Yeah,
asked if they would take
yeah.
part?
I didn't know any of them, but that it was just, they look interesting, go and ask them. you know.
Yeah.
And obviously with safety first, absolutely supreme levels of safety, and the line measured out. We'd very much kind of find our composition and then wait for somebody to come into the frame.
Great. And this was all on your Hasselblad still with
Yeah, of course.
the
Yeah. So
cover two.
we shot tethered to a laptop with a tripod and locked off the shot so that we they could kind of see the picture without having to look at the back of the camera. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and amazing quality, beautiful quality, you know.
Okay. So obviously Hasselblad webinar, so it'd only be right for us to mention what's in your kit bag. So you mentioned
Okay.
before you've got your 860-100.
Yes.
We've got a question actually from Stephen. So what is your most used lens for your portraits? Do you have a go-to lens?
No, not at all. I have a 50mm, an 80mm, and 100mm, and I've actually quite enjoyed started shooting with wider lenses. Actually, shooting portraits with wider lenses. So this series that you've just got, that I've just showed you, the 2 meter project, the really key thing with that was filling the frame and showing some of the environment. So I actually bought a 35mm lens, so quite a wide lens. What's that equivalent to on sort of regular DSLR?
It's about 28, is it? Yeah, about 28, I think.
About
Yep.
28mm, yeah. So that was really good for filling the frame with the subject at full length and showing quite a lot of the scene. And that was the first lens I bought for a while, because I tend to not need anything. I mean, I could probably exist my way through life with an 80mm lens, a standard lens, you know, but it's really nice to have a bit of flexibility. So I don't have a go-to at all, but I tend to be shooting wider rather than telly, but it's not hard and fast, so it's not much of an answer really.
And then a question for Mark, which is relevant. To what degree does your equipment dictate how you work? So how important is the medium you use to you?
There's not many situations when I don't want this degree of quality with it. You know, it, like, the capabilities of that sensor. I mean, I don't want this to turn into a QVC advert, but the camera I use is yeah. This is actually a really good way of showing like what you can do. So this is a photograph of Mabel, as you can see. She's a singer, very pop, very cool, and I shot this, I think, on 80mm, and quite straight, you know, quite a straightforward on the left. You can see quite a straightforward kind of frame, really. It's cool shot. And then I kept zooming in and getting tighter and tighter with the frame for this close up with her teeth here and her nails and her jewelry, obviously. And this actually prints, the right hand image prints in my portfolio at 12:16, which I thought was a fantastic advert for what is a very tight crop, but still you're able to get a really nice print out of it. And that was the greatest advert, I think, for the quality of the camera that I'm using, you know.
Okay. And then another example here.
Yeah, God love him, Jeremy Corbyn, an amazing guy, brilliant to be in his space. I don't mind telling you, everyone, feel free to log off, but I'm a massive fan. So he pulled, I had 3 minutes, no time at all, and I had this studio set up in someone's lounge for a walk around that he was doing, and he didn't even really know that he was going to be doing it, but we sort of pulled him in and got these shots, and again, no time for changing a lens, and all of the shots were at the same crop as you can see on the right, but he pulled a funny face for 2 of the frames, and they're pin sharp, and I was able again to get a 12:16 crop to print to 12:16 print from this crop that you can see, and that's again a massive pull up. So that you have that kind of degree of flexibility in what you're shooting with this sensor has helped me out portfolio wise, definitely, with some of my work, which I'm really grateful for, you know.
Does it help with clients if you can produce images of that quality? Does it help you to win work, or do they demand that?
Well, it's not always about winning work, it's about keeping work. And for those clients that know that you know, if the advertising job we're doing does go out of home and they're going to make enormous billboards out of it, then that definitely helps to know that the quality is always there in the work to, you know, and that quality counts more and more. So, like, I don't know if it really answers the question, but it is
Yeah.
absolutely key to me to shoot at that quality as often as possible. And just, it's not just about how big will the file go, but it's the integrity of that file and
Yeah.
the capabilities in terms of grade and colors and, you know, shadows and highlighted information and all that stuff that's absolutely vital on that curve. It is, you're better off having it than not.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Okay. Right. So just another question from John. Do you do your own post-production?
No.
Okay.
I don't wish to consign myself to a sort of windowless room plugging away on Photoshop at all. So my workflow tends to be shoot, edit, and I'll do like a base level kind of grade, maybe in Focus or Lightroom sometimes, and then just send a JPEG and the raw file to a retoucher. So I don't do any post myself, because there's people that I use that they spend their whole lives in Photoshop and they know it 100 million times better than I do. So there's no point me trying to learn to output at the quality that they do. I said to myself a few years ago that I'm no longer ever putting out work that isn't professionally retouched, and it's really, really important to me to just maintain that as a standard. And I've got some amazing guys that I work with that I'll never touch their capability, you know. So I love that. I love the
Okay.
surprise of getting the work back and just seeing, like, you know, that this is what we were aiming for, but here's what we've done, and going, oh mate, that's so much better than I could have done, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So next thing we're going to look at, I think in between your commercial jobs, you also do a lot of your own sort of personal projects.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a photographer, how important do you think it is for a photographer to do personal projects?
Well, I almost want to sort of flip that, really, because while no photographers got into this just to do commercial work or just to make money. You know, we got into it because we all wanted to shoot the things we were into, or to tell stories, or to use it as a tool to sort of let people know about the things that we're fascinated by and curious by. And I've always really been into people and the world around me, and I always try to have some personal work on the go. So some projects, and using the project you're working on to get you to a position you'd like to be, or in front of people you'd like to have see your work. So I'm really, really keen to, and I don't tend to like start a project and have it fade away. I really, really like have one idea, see it through, try to exhibit it, and then move on to the next thing in whatever form that might take. And that tends to work as a flow for me, I suppose.
Okay. And this project that we're seeing now is at your local pub, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think it's really interesting that the project I've had the most success with, or been best regarded for, was while we travel all around the world as photographers, we're very, very lucky, tend to get to travel a bit. The work that I'm best regarded for was shot 500 yards from my house in my local pub. This is the
Yeah.
Palm Tree Pub in Bow, which is an incredibly special pub in that it's had crooners singing there, old jazz singers singing and performing there for the last sort of 40 years or so. And this is two of them that we had turn up. So it's not an editorial, oh no, sorry, it's not a documentary project. It's very much a portrait project. And I shot them, we had a load of performers turn up, and I photographed them as a portrait and performing too. It was absolutely beautiful. It was a really lovely experience. This is Jack Honeybourne. I think he was 92 or 93, playing the keyboard, the old piano in the little band, the Palm Trio. And it was an absolute privilege to photograph him. He photographed with Vera Lynn after the Second World War. He was in her band, which nobody here will remember, but It was incredible to meet somebody who'd been playing for that long. He's 92 and he came after work.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what the job is.
Yeah. And just while we're talking about projects, we can ask our audience if they shoot personal projects, just to get a bit of feedback. So you should see a poll as appearing on your screens. So if you could be so kind to take part. Okay, yeah. So early votes coming in that a lot of people shoot projects all of the time. So yeah. Yeah,
I hope
and
so.
no one doesn't shoot projects. So yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay.
We're preaching to the converted, Mark. This is great.
Okay, so we'll just close that and move on. So this next one, the Herder Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more of this. Obviously, it's sort of, you have to travel for this. How easy is it for you to travel with all your kits and lighting and things like that?
It's not very easy, no, especially when it doesn't turn up. So this was photographed in Lesotho, which is a landlocked country within South Africa. I've been there with a charity called Riders for Health a couple of times, and we travel up into the mountains photographing medical workers, and these are medical workers, beneficiaries in villages who have been looked after by this incredible charity. You can look them up. They're called Riders for Health, or in the UK, the fundraising arm is Two Wheels for Life, and they're very much connected to motorcycles who can access the most remote villages via because where four-wheel drives can't go. So it's incredible to have been there, and I'm quite connected to the place. And while you are traveling, you'll see herder boys looking after their flocks of oxen or goats or sheep, whatever it might be. And I really, really wanted to go back and reconnect and shoot portraits of some of the herder boys. So I have some good friends there, and they really helped me ensure that it was done in the right way and that their stories were told. And we had a fantastic exhibition, didn't we, Mark? A really lovely show in the old Photographers Gallery in Leicester Square in London. And we had big, beautiful, enormous prints by Metro did them, and just an incredible privilege to show the work and represent for some of these people that I've met and to tell their stories. And yeah, we took a lighting kit, and their blankets are very synonymous with their kind of appearance. So we took, like the guy on the right, we took his blanket off, used it as a backdrop, and then lit the portraits on location wherever we were, because the sun position, we couldn't really guarantee we'd be able to use consistent available light. So we brought the sun with us with a Broncolor Move pack and shot with 1200 watts of sort of light. So as long as you can overcome the power of the sun, basically, you can ensure that your series is really consistent.
Okay, great. And some of these photos here, Hasselblad followers might recognize. We've used these for a few campaigns, one of which was the launch of the H6D camera in 2016. Yeah. So these they're Icelandic, aren't they? CrossFit
yeah, that's
athletes.
Right. Yeah, I did a project called Elmador, which again is on my website, and all about CrossFit, but the sport of CrossFit in Iceland. This is like really typical of how a project for me comes to life, I suppose. That a friend of mine was posting CrossFit images, and I just messaged him and said, "What on earth is this?" And he said, "Oh," and I said, "Why are you always in Iceland doing it?" And he said, "Oh, for some reason, despite this really small population, they're absolutely mad on CrossFit here and take like podium places on the in the World Championships constantly." And I couldn't work out why that was, and there's no hard and fast rule as to why that is, but I just thought it has to relate to the sort of brutal landscape, the harsh climate that they have, and just that requirement of an individual to kind of power their way through winter in a place like that because of seasonal adjustment disorder and the conditions around that. It was really really fascinating to get into it and photograph some of the athletes in their working habitat, and but to try and find that correlation with the weather, the landscape, and how hardcore Icelanders are. You know, they'll swim in the sea not in a wetsuit, in like basic swimwear in November, not for the exercise of swimming, just to be able to take the pain.
Right.
And I was like, my motto in life: no pain, no pain. And I've always really tried to avoid pain, but they're really into it. So
Mm.
and it really helps inform their training a great deal about how far and hard they can push themselves. So yeah, it was interesting.
Okay, and then I actually requested for you to put these in because this is my favourite project of yours. I think these images sort of really sort of sum up your sense of humour and that. I think you know, some of these portraits.
Yeah, well, this is interesting because this is the first project I shot on Hasselblad actually. So I did this about 5 years ago at the Herne Hill Velodrome. Prior to that, I'd been watching the Olympics and the 2012 Olympics, it must have been, and they had these guys like fizzing around on this yellow motorbike here in front of the Kirin to set the pace for so. And I phoned my cousin Casper, who's well into cycling, and I said, "Who are these guys?" There's these, like you can see on the left here, these sort of chubby older dudes that just like create a big slipstream for the riders to tuck in behind, and they work as a team. And he explained this whole thing. They're called Derny drivers, and I was like, "Where can I go and photograph some of them?" And he said, "Oh, you've got to go down to Herne Hill." And I went down there, and this brilliant thing occurs when, all these all these project photographers that we've got watching this, which is amazing. They will respond to this, I'm sure, because this wonderful thing happens when at first nobody wants to be photographed, and they all sort of shy away from you. So you keep going, and then they just sort of tolerate you, and you keep going, and then they ignore you, and then you get the shots you want. They don't even notice that you're there, and that's great. When you're in that sweet spot, you can really take the mickey, and really get amongst it and get the shots that you want. So you've got to hang in there and kind of resist. Persistence wears down resistance is a cliche, but it does sort of work. So that very much happened here, where they'd be like announcing these are the races that are happening today, and by the way, Tom Oldham's here again with his camera, so don't worry, he's one of us, and just let him get on with it, and it's fine. And that was great. So it meant that you're allowed to be there, you've got the permission of everyone, and just crack on. And I came away from it with some really lovely portraits. And this is Derek, who had been working there from since the 1950s. Very sadly, died actually last year, Derek. But he was furniture at this place, and just such a character. And it was just pictures for days. And especially, I'm not really like a cycle. Well, I'm not at all a cycle racer. So just men in lycra and that whole culture is alien to me. So it's therefore fascinating, and to explore it and really feel like you've gone from the macro detail of a bike all the way to a wide shot of the activity is, you keep going until, you know it's done you in, or you've done it in, really. So and I really like covered the whole breadth of the topic, I think, with this project, and it was a real pleasure to do.
That's great. So to move on, we advertised this webinar as you being an award-winning photographer. So it brings us to this image here. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah. So I am very proud to have won the portrait category of the Sony World Photography Awards this year. I should have probably said that the Crooners project won the professional category in 2018 at the Sony World
Yeah.
Photography Awards, and this one has won the open category this year, which is it's a portrait of Frank Black who's the singer of the Pixies, and it was shot for Mojo magazine. So they do this it's a lovely brief for a photographer, and it's go and get a portrait black and white for the full page feature in the Mojo interview. So go to a hotel in West London and photograph the singer from the Pixies. It's just like an automatic yes. And he's been around the block, Frank Black, and I had to wait. It's a 2-hour slot, and we were in the room from the beginning of the interview. We just have to sit there and wait. We're all set up and ready. We just sit there and wait. And he's, just been chatting for sort of an hour and 40 minutes, and he sits down, and he's a bit sort of, hello, mate. And I just asked him to express his exasperation at having been photographed so constantly for 20 or 30 years, and this is what he offered up. And I can honestly tell you that I knew everything after this was a waste of time, and that we had the shot that we needed. And it's been really lovely working with a magazine like Mojo, who I've shot for quite a few years now, because they have access to fantastic people like this. I've shot some greats for them, but there's trust now. And I knew this would be the shot they would want. And I had that confirmed by the designer, who was like, yep, I just showed it to everyone straight away, and we knew straight away that it was an absolute banger and it had to be the one. And again, I'm very aware of my privilege, and to be able to have access to people like this for Mojo, and to then be free enough to put them into competitions and things like that, and to have it recognized is absolutely massive for me. And I'll never forget, like, never lose touch of what that means to me, because it means a huge amount. And I just to have something in a really classic format like this, very, very simple, a black tablecloth, a black colorama behind him, one light, that's all it is. It couldn't be simpler and more straight up, and all of us could achieve this, I'm sure. But it allows for the connection. Keeping it really, really simple allows for the connection with the model. And I acknowledge that he probably didn't really want to be doing this. He expressed how much he did or didn't, and we got the shot that we wanted, and it was a lovely sweet spot to be in.
Great. Okay, so we've actually had some questions about this next session, about sort of photographers that you're inspired by and who you admire.
Yeah.
So a couple of people that you've picked out.
Yeah. So Jack Davidson is a young, I mean, he's 29, I think, photographer in, I think he's in London, and I just really, really love his approach. Maybe everyone can have a look at this now or later, whenever you like, but he, I just think the quality of these ideas that he's putting out are so strong, and they could have, it's almost like that, it's like that Vivian Maier effect, really. His street photography could have been shot at any point in the last sort of 70 or 80 years, it feels like. And it's this riot of texture and color, but punchy black and white and feel and process. And it's, this thing happens where when you've been doing this for a while, smugness is a real curse anyway, and I hope I'm not smug, but you just get a bit, I don't think I suffer from world weariness exactly, but I am, like, aware that you don't get shocked by much very often, let's say. But when I saw his stuff, it was like, oh yeah, great photography, brilliant. Like, he's got such a fresh approach, and I really admire that. Just that he's not applying any of the other people's rules. He's just doing it his way. But I invite you to look at it and just think, what a load of rubbish, But I don't think you'll think that. I just think you'll see ideas, and really well executed in a very, quite often, simple way. He's got a great eye.
Okay,
And
and this.
yeah, I went to a talk the other day at the Photographers Gallery, and Sophie Mayan was on the panel, and the extent to which she has built community around her work is a lesson to us all about, there's complete trust between her and her models. She said a few years ago she's no longer doing any retouch on her work, so and it's really paid off. She's shooting fantastically honest images around you should discover it for yourself, but around form, particularly female form. And I really admire how brave. Again, she's quite young, but how astonishingly talented, brave, and is enjoying some real success. She sort of shot some big campaigns in a very honest way. Particularly notable, I think, was Mother Care that she did, and I love that she's getting commercial work through her honesty. But it's not just that; it's the respect and the community she's built around her work. And genuinely, I think it's a lesson to everyone about how you access people to shoot the stories that you care about.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Right.
So this next section, we're going to look back at some of these high-profile, well-known people that you've shot, and you've got a few sort of interesting stories that go with them that I've had the privilege of hearing before. So it'd be quite good to revisit
Many
those.
times.
Yeah. So this guy here, Richard Branson.
Woo! Sir Richard Branson, you don't get to be a billionaire by hanging out doing photo shoots all day, is what I learned from this. I
Yeah.
photographed him a few times, and he is always holding someone or something, or it's always a stunt. He's waving the Union Jack or something. And I was at his house for an event, and I said to the PR, I'd really like to get a portrait of him. And luckily, I sort of sent it to him, and he's used it. So that was helpful. But she was really helpful, and just kind of, yeah, okay, we should do that. And they knew they could use it and have access to it, and that was fine. But I really wanted one that just showed his magnificence. And 3 frames, man, 3 frames. And then he clapped his hands, went, right, thanks very much, and walked off. And how he knew I had the shot, I've got no idea at all. But it's a lesson to us all to be ready, I think, and be prepared, know your exposures, like just know that you've got the shot, know your kit. And yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of this portrait, not just because it's a lovely shot of him, but 3 frames.
All
That was
3
tough.
frames of the same angle and view, or did they
No, they
differ?
weren't actually. No, there's one other different one, and it was a marvel how he knew that I had whatever I needed, But again, like I said, you don't get to be a billionaire by hanging out with me all day. That's for sure.
Okay, and then there's this guy that's known to be a bit of a joker.
Yeah. So I had the incredible privilege of photographing Usain a few times, and I come from. There won't be many people from Moor Critchall in near Witchhampton, near Wimborne, in Dorset, in southern England, watching this. But to be someone from Moor Critchall, population about 8 or 9, uh, that as he came up the corridor, he looked at me, the fastest man who's ever set foot on the planet, and looked at me and went, "Oh, you again." And he was joking, of course, because he's got a great sense of humor and he's a funny guy to be around. But I thought that's nice, and because you don't ever expect sort of talent to remember you or recognize you or anything like that. They do a lot of photo shoots, man. So you can't necessarily expect to always be remembered, but that he did was great. And I am very, very proud again I took a nice photo of his feet once that were on my website, and he was like, "Why are you taking photos of my feet?" And I was like, "What, the fastest feet in the history of all the feet that there have ever been?" That sort of makes them quite notable, don't you think? It's like, hmm.
Yeah.
So it's I keep saying the word privilege. I wish there was another word, but it's really nice to have had that time, and that experience.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we're just coming to the end. Last sort of topic I've got. You've recently been signed with an agent.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I have.
so yeah, just curious to how does that work, and is it necessary for all sort of photographers to have agents? Do you think?
Well, I mean, I survived quite well for quite a long time without an agent, but I didn't feel necessarily as I was in the conversation for every job that I should be. And it's really nice having somebody out there doing your bidding and sorting the money out, So I signed with Cross Agency, CRXSS on screen now. They're worth a follow. They produce beautiful work through their photographers, and I really like them. They're really enthusiastic, have incredible drive and energy, and there's a lovely team feel. We have drinks at Christmas. We had a quiz the other night, and it's really nice because it's quite a solo existence, isn't it? You'll all know and respect that, and it's really nice to feel part of something, a collective or a group of people trying to do something together. So, you know, um, I have a great deal of respect for them, and it's so far so good.
Okay.
Recommended.
So how would a photographer get an agent? Is there any tips or advice you can give there,
Yeah,
or is it doing the
it's
work?
a two-way street is the thing. It's a two-way street. You already have to be working, I think, in a commercial way, unless your work is absolutely singing and really offering something new. Um, it's really hard for them necessarily to think, how is this going to become money? So don't expect them to kind of pluck you and throw you out into a commercial space, because you kind of should already be there to be attractive to an agent, and they will just take you to the next level and ensure you're getting paid the money that you should be getting, rather than the sums that you might be asking for at the moment, which might not necessarily be the right thing. They know what the right money is for jobs. So they yeah, does that answer that, Mark?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
Good. Okay, I
Okay,
hope
so
that's
that pretty much brings us to the end, but we've got a bit of time for some questions, if you don't mind.
of course, far
Um,
away.
so Paul, he doesn't see any square format photos. Do you ever shoot square?
No, no, I don't. A long time ago, when I worked in the art college, I had access to a beautiful and very tired collection of like 503s and 500s, old film, not old, but film Hasselblads. Um, but I haven't shot any square for too long. It's criminal, really. But no, there sadly isn't. I should dig through my old files and get some scanned, actually, because I've got some absolute winners.
Okay. Question from Ben.
Thank you, Paul.
Are you consciously pursuing a particular style of photography?
Now, this is an interesting question for me, because I don't actually think necessarily I've got an aesthetic that is sort of defined in one way, and that's really convenient for some people, just to do one thing really, really well, and they'll always be known for that thing. But I don't really have that, and I prefer not to sort of be too pigeonholed as one kind of photographer, and that can work to your detriment, especially commercially. But I like to use different techniques, different feels that are right for the subject, that are right for the lighting and the location and the mood or whatever of that day. So right now I really like a Photech soft lighter, and turned away, so it's absolutely soft and really minimal. But tomorrow it might be a beauty dish, So um, my look sort of changes all the time. If you look through tomoldham.com, you'll see a whole range of stuff, and you can see it. I've put it all in one kind of streaming feed like that, and you can see really quickly that there's quite a few different sort of aesthetics I like to apply.
Okay. A question from Suzanne. What was your favorite project ever to shoot? Is it one that we featured, or?
I think it is. I think the nicest, the Crooners was really special, and we had a lovely launch night. We made a vinyl album of recordings of the singers, because do you remember when, you probably are little, but when I was little, I used to get a record and mum would put the headphones on me, and we would uh, I'd listen to an album to give her a bit of peace, I think. And while I was listening to that album, mainly Stevie Wonder in the 1970s, I would look at the artwork, and I just thought it's the perfect medium for photography, to hear the music whilst looking at the pictures. And we did that with Crooners. We recorded the old jazz singers performing in the pub, and it's just the most beautiful thing I've created. So whenever somebody asks me that, my mind always goes straight back to the palm tree, because we just got it right. We got the tone and feel of it right.
Okay. And then Dave, do you already have an idea for the next project you're going to be shooting?
Dave, legend. An idea for the next project I'm shooting? Yeah, there's one in the can already. I've got a massive project ready to go, but I can't kind of release it. One of the pictures has been in the Royal Photographic Society show for this year from it, but I want to release them when I can have the exhibition, and of course we can't have exhibitions at the moment. I was really hoping I was going to be working on that right now, but unfortunately it's going to be quite hard to plan for. So I'm not quite sure, but I've got one in the can, and then it's about the one after that at the moment.
Okay. And then a question from Carsten. Do you have any advice for how to make it through the jungle of photography in the modern world? What's your one bit of advice that you would give a photographer looking to make it in this industry?
Carsten, there's only hard work. That's all there is. And your uniqueness of voice and driving that forward is absolutely key to being. It kind of depends on what your measure of success is, really. Maybe your measure of success is producing the kind of work that you love. Maybe it's making you happy, whatever your work is, just to seek sort of happiness with it. But you know, if it's commercially, then it's getting out there, getting your aesthetic out there that you're pleased with. So it comes through personal work and then aiming that personal work at the people that might commission it, I think. So I'm not sure if that is enough of an answer, but a rule that I've worked really hard to stick by is the Helsinki bus station theory.
Right.
Now, I invite you to look up the Helsinki bus station theory because I've worked to that theory and it's held me in very good stead. There you go.
Okay. And another question that might have the same sort of answer, really, but Johnny is asking a little bit more specifically, any advice for a photography student looking to then turn professional? I suppose it's the same.
Yeah, my advice on that is sort of crack your workflow so that the technical is you've mastered the technical. And not that I feel as though I've mastered the technical, because there's a great deal of learning more I could do, like we could all do. But get your exposures and your processing and your lighting and your workflow down so that when a problem comes up or you're just in front of your subject, you can just focus on the connection and the interaction and nailing your composition, because you know all the technical's done. That's sort of left brain and right brain speaking to each other really intelligently and accurately. And I really strongly advise you to just get on top of all that stuff, all your lenses, all your raw files, all of that, so that you can really focus on the creativity and letting the ideas just flow out of you as easily as possible without getting bogged down with that sweaty panic when something isn't working technically.
Okay, and then last question is from Sue, and how do you think photography is going to be in the new normal after this sort of virus disruption? Do you think photography will change at all?
Longer lenses, probably. I should think. Well, I think there's a beautiful and brilliant thing that's already happened where we've all got astonishing cameras with us all the time. So that is great that photography is in the hands of so many people to document everything around them. I think our working practices in studios particularly will change and adapt, which is a bit of a shame when you're a portrait photographer to have these sort of barriers in place. But that's just a necessary requirement, unfortunately. So that's what we've got to do. I'm hoping it will only get better, but I can't guarantee it will.
We'll have to wait and see.
What a rubbish end.
Okay, well, yeah, so we've come to the end. That's our hour.
Great.
Thank you very much, Tom. Much appreciated you taking the time out and chatting to us.
Thanks for all your lovely questions, everyone. Thanks for sticking with it.
Yeah, and all the best, and hopefully see you at a social gathering soon.
Oh, I hope so, mate.
Not through a webcam.
So. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, so as mentioned at the beginning, we've got a similar interview style webinar coming up again same time next week with Sean Conboy, who's a UK architectural photographer. Register on the Hasselblad website, and the Hasselblad website is also there for any product info, private demo requests, partner network, and sort of inspirational stories and lots of information on Hasselblad's history. So please check that out. And thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully see you next time.